on these various positions. I would like to see that position come back with a recommendation, since it seems as if the challenge is adequate pay. Let's see if we can do that, we can address that issue. And it's not the pay issue, and whatever issues that are out there, because beyond the, I guess, hedging that is done, and beyond the accounting work with utilities, we certainly want someone on the cutting edge of what's going on in the marketplace. You're hearing all kind of things with wind energy, and I don't know how much background you have with solar and everything else, but whatever we could do as a council to put in position a package that makes sense to get us the best directions, what I'd like to see done.
And I just want to get clear, because I am really unclear about what this council is directing. On the one hand, there's a spin, 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 was the quote Mr. Johnson used, which I think is very inaccurate, but that was what was said. Now we're being told we need to look at spending more for a utility director. Which is it?
Well, you suggested, I'm following your suggestion, that you could not find adequate pay to find a competent person to serve in the capacity of utility director. So what I'm suggesting is if we audit the market with pay, and that's what you suggested, right?
We will send immediately a market analysis with that.
That's all I'm suggesting.
Mr. Silver.
We spent 50% of our time talking about something that's not on the agenda. We're all cognizant of that requirement. So I think that's no sense whipping that dog. You've got to get it worked out. Period. That's one of our assignments. City administration is one of ourselves. But we've still got these three things to work on. Why the hell can't we just sort of confine ourselves to the agenda?
Because you moved it to item number 3.
Well, I suggest we do 3 because that's the presentation so we can make an intelligent decision. You have someone here from Baton Rouge.
We do have,
We should.
I didn't know that's good.
Can I?
Mr. Crutchfield.
And this is just a brief comment, Mr. Marshall. I want to make sure that the public knows that our gas department superintendent has been the gas department superintendent for a number of years, and monitors the gas market daily and talks to our representative with the LNGA on a daily basis and reports to me. And we discuss the gas prices, when we should make hedges, which I also report to you as a member of that pricing committee. That's all. I just want to make sure that everyone's aware that we do monitor that on a daily basis, and we have a professional that works for the Louisiana Municipal Gas Authority for 68 other member cities that helps us watch that. So we're not minding the store on gas prices. We watch that every day. So just want to make sure that everyone knows that.
Item 3. Okay, at this time, we got item number 3, a resolution adopting proposed pay plan and classification plan for classified employees for the city of Alexandria. We have Ms. Pam Sherrod.
At this time, I'd like to turn it over. We did conclude our pay and class study. We did have it voted on by the commission. There were a lot of questions you had at the last meeting, and in order to answer those, and any that you may have had between the last meeting and now, I brought Mr. Chip King in. He's the consultant we use with Archer Company. He's going to give you a brief presentation and answer any questions you may have.
Doesn't have a lot of time. Tell them to hurry up.
Yes, sir.
No, fine.
With that last admonition, I probably should not have plugged in my laptop because that would have made it much quicker.
Correct.
To begin with. I'll take some direction from the committee in terms of how you'd like us to proceed. My name is Chip King. I'm with the Archer Company. Our company has been working in conjunction with the city of Alexandria now for quite some time, working to maintain and keep the pay plan put together and recommendations working through the Civil Service Commission. As you know, we've had an opportunity over the last year to work directly with the Civil Service Commission and with the administration to do a major update and a major overhaul of the pay plan in order to bring it back in line with current expectations in the competitive market, but also addressing internal equity, fairness, and objectivity in terms of the way positions are placed in the plan relative to one another within the city. And what you have before you is a body of work, many, many hours, both on the part of the Archer Company, but also on the part of both civil service and the mayor's office in terms of coming together with a good compromise plan that we believe will serve the city well in this process. I do have a presentation, which I will be glad to give. It's mostly aimed at helping you to understand the methodology, the process behind how we came to put together the plan in the way that we did. And I think, given that we haven't had this opportunity to review this with the council before, I think this would actually be a very good use of a few minutes. I will try to make it brief with your permission. I'd like to just kind of give you some highlights of it. That work?
Yes, move forward.
A little bit of, happened right as the lights went off, right as I stepped on the thing. A little bit of history and background in terms of the why we did it. It has been 10 years since this process, a little over 10 years, since there was a major update to the pay plan. There's been a couple times in the interim where we have worked and taken a look at making major revisions to the plan, bringing it back in line. But it's significant to notice that in a couple of those occasions, while a lot of work had gone down, nothing ever came of the results of those updates. So what has happened is over the course of the last 10 years, we've worked closely with civil service to maintain individual positions as we go. But when it has come to adopting and implementing the major updates along the way, it has not been implemented. And so what that basically means for you today is the changes that you see are kind of cumulative in that process. It has been maintained cooperatively, and that's a key part of maintaining the fairness and objectivity of the plan. There have been a lot of changes, though, that have been made outside of the working relationship we have with the city, that the city has done internally, that were outside of and apart from the original methodology. So one of the major efforts of this update was to bring all the positions that are as part of the classified plan back in line with the methodology that's used to ensure that that fairness and objectivity exists. It was time to do this. It had been neglected for a long time. We got to the point where the pay plan was being maintained in kind of a Band-Aid fashion. So it's really important, given all the things that were taking place, that we work towards this effort. And obviously the commission agreed, administration and council agreed in part of this process. So it was a good time and good opportunity to work on this. If you look at the first two bullets, this in a nutshell is really the why of what we're trying to do, what it was that we were trying to accomplish. Both of them are very important when you talk about two sides of a pay plan. The first is the internal equity piece, where you're looking at fairness and objectivity with the way you address pay within the system. You've got a series of classifications, you've got a pay plan, you've got classifications assigned to pay grades. What you need is to ensure that the relative ranking of each positions in the pay plan, and that in essence translates into the pay grade, is done in a way that measures objectively the complexity, the difficulty, the responsibility of each position. Positions that are more complex, that have more responsibility, that have bigger impacts, should have a higher ranking in the structure. Likewise, lower in the pay range, while very important, the decisions, the discretions, and things like that are limited. So you have to have an objective means by which you've done this. Now, this has been in place for a while, but again, there's been a lot of changes that have been made outside of this process. This was an opportunity to bring all the classified positions back in line, looking at every single one of them across the board, realigning them with the duties and responsibilities as they currently exist. The other piece, of course, is the competitiveness of your pay plan overall. And with that, you need to do a market analysis to get an idea of what a meter reader is being paid in a competing jurisdiction, what the going rate for accountants are, what the equipment operators are getting in the open market. So that from the standpoint of implementing your pay plan, The pay ranges that are used and assigned to each classification allow you to be competitive and thus promotes recruitment. Obviously, if you don't have the people in the positions, you can't get the job done. And retention, because a lot of effort goes into training and equipping and bringing employees up to speed. You want to be able to retain those that are qualified and that are doing a good job. Unless you're competitive in the market, recruitment's going to suffer, retention's going to suffer, and that's a critical part of this process. The last piece, of course, is updating job documentation. That's every bit as critical as the first two. It's the less sexy side of the issue, though, but it's a lot of the behind-the-scenes stuff from a legal perspective and from a civil service perspective that needs to happen. Briefly about internal equity. We've got to look at the duties and responsibilities of each of the position. We need to understand the impact of any changes in job assignment or classification, relative pay grade and how that works. And we need to ensure that new positions that were brought in that were not considered part of the process were considered as well. A lot of effort and a lot of time went into this piece of the process, and it was a major component of the study. You're seeking to understand the job duties and responsibilities of every position so that you can align them according to the complexity, the authority, the discretion, the responsibility in a manner that is fair and objective. Now, what you don't see in any of these slides and any of these discussions is any concept of the person in the job itself. Did we just lose?
I think it's telling you something.
That might help the process quite a bit. The key here is that we're looking at positions themselves, jobs and positions, not individual employees in that process. At the end of the day, you have a position that's hired to do X, Y, Z. What is X, Y, Z worth to this city and this organization and this market? And that's really what it factors down to. Probably the most opportune time to go down is the long, detailed assessment of job evaluation and what it's about. I'm not going to bore you with that process because it really is kind of a boring process, but what I do want you to walk away with and understand is that this is not just sticking our finger in the air and taking a swag at what we think a position is worth and where it fits into your ranking. There's an objective, systematic approach whereby we measure every job in the city that's part of this classification plan according to a set of over 30 criteria that we're looking at. Very objective, very well-established process. It stood the test of time. This process has been in place and has been being directly applied to the public sector for 30 years now. It's been proven valid, reliable, and very justifiable. Yes, sir.
In your honest opinion, as a result of this exhaustive study, do you feel comfortable that this is as fair a deal as we could have for the city of Alexandria employees?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. Pay plans can always be better. There's no such thing as a perfect pay plan. And it will, and it's with an admonition to the council that you've got to maintain it over time. But at a certain point in time, you've got to decide this is as good as we can get it. There will always be changes. There always will be need to address issues as you go through. But I believe that this is a very competent, very well constructed, and will serve the city well.
Mr. Smith.
Let me ask you something. The ones that been here a long time, they say some are saying they move up in grade level, but no pay.
That's possible.
How did you come about that?
Well, there's a couple things that you gotta factor into that discussion. First of all, understand that this is a major update to the pay plan. The idea is to make sure that the structure of the process is fair and equitable across the board, that is competitive. Just by doing a pay plan update, and this is something the employees were told at the very beginning, this is not an excuse to give everybody a pay raise. That's not the purpose and the objective of the process. The purpose and objective of this study is to make sure that your pay plan is solid, that there's fairness and equity in it, and that it's competitive with the market. That may or may not mean that certain employees as part of the process will get an increase, obviously with council and administration approval, pending the funding available and stuff like that. There are certain criteria that we will absolutely look for anytime we do an adoption, and if you adopt this pay plan, we strongly recommend that you consider. There are a number of employees that when you adopt this pay plan, they will fall below the minimum of the pay range, of the new pay range as proposed. In our perspective, it's absolutely critical that you bring them up to the minimum of the new pay ranges so that when you hire new people behind them, that you won't have folks that are leapfrogging over existing employees. That's absolutely critical. It is also my understanding in that that the city has budgeted for that and is already included and planned for that. So that's why you have information on what those costs are. That's already been factored into your current budget. Am I correct in that? Now, beyond that, the question is, what do you do with everybody else? It is recognized that compression can enter into the equation. Anytime you bring salaries up, particularly on the bottom end of the pay ranges, it's possible that you're going to bump employees that haven't been there as long, or it's not always a longevity issue, but you can bring some of those at the lower end of the range up closer to those that have been here for a couple of years. Compression is an important element that you have to address. We've talked and discussed this with both the commission and with the administration. We've come up with some recommendations in terms of how you do that, and it's my understanding that the administration has made a commitment to start looking at that and focusing on that pretty closely in the coming years. That said, it's also recognized that that primarily becomes a matter of financial discretion in terms of what is financially feasible for you to afford. But it is my understanding that the administration is looking forward towards, after we get this adopted, after we bring people up to the minimum, in the next 1, 2, maybe 3 years, how do we start bringing people into the ranges to address that?
Is there a basis for merit?
I'm sorry?
Is there a basis for merit?
In terms of those discussions, initially, in terms of what we've recommended, no, because you don't currently have a very good system in terms of how you do that. We are actually a very strong proponent of doing it on the basis of merit. And part of our recommendation is that you give strong consideration to a performance appraisal process that allows the departments, the divisions, and the administration to address performance as part of that process.
Okay, Mr. Lawson.
You wouldn't have suggested that in this pay plan, what you're asking the administration to do?
Say it again?
You wouldn't have addressed that in the pay plan, what you're asking the administration to do, which is deal with the compression?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
You're saying that, and correct me if I'm not following, what you're suggesting is that the administration deal with those employees that are affected with the compression. Is that what you're suggesting?
Yes, and understand that it's in a series of priority orders. First of all, you've got to adopt the plan. Because until you adopt the plan, any discussions of bringing people up to the minimum or placing them into the range is moot and irrelevant because you're focusing on a target that doesn't exist.
But your plan did not, this plan here does not suggest how to get that done.
Actually, no, that's not true. We actually have put together some proposals, some options, but you have to understand that there is no perfect way to do that. There are best practices, there are ideal methods, but at the end of the day, it's going to come down to how much money is available to address the problem, and how can we use the money that is available most fairly and most objectively.
And one last question. What did you consider priority with this pay plan? Did you consider the ability to recruit new hires, or did you consider the ability to retain existing employees as a priority?
They really go hand in hand. If you've got competitive ranges, both of them are going to be addressed as part of the process. By the nature of how you address your minimum starting pays in your pay range, how you draw the lines themselves, you're reflecting the competitive market. It's really not possible to separate the two issues. It's going to come down to getting a plan that is going to allow you to be competitive. What's going to work on the retention side is the continued commitment to maintaining it over time, to address pay through merit or through longevity or through other means year after year. Because simply adopting this plan here today, but then not doing anything to address pay increases for the next 5 years, gets you absolutely nowhere 5 years from now in terms of that process. So it's hard to separate the two. They really kind of go very hand in hand.
Mr. Smith.
Okay, now 2 questions. What percentage of employees, say based on 100%, what percentage that's we moving up? 83, 85%? What percentage?
Help me
are we
understand.
elevating?
A percentage of,
We elevating from, say, the bottom up to the ones that are, what percentage are not getting anything moving?
I don't have that information for you, but we can get that information for you.
And that's on, would that be on the minimum and maximum, Mr. Smith, is what you're asking?
Yeah, and see, when you talk about compression, are you talking about the ones that's not getting anything?
That's right.
Okay, that's why I want to know what percentage we
On the
have to be
minimum or
doing.
maximum side, I think what Mr. Smith was asking, who will not be getting a raise based on this overall pay plan? I think that's what this council needs to know. Percentage-wise.
Percentage-wise, yeah, we can get you that information. Yeah, I do believe you have some information that was made available to you in terms of those positions that would be,
I saw
that would
that,
be
I was
below
just
the
trying,
minimum.
I was just asking him about,
Yeah.
Okay, but
And if you got that information, that'll at least give you kind of a visual snapshot, but we can go back and run some percentage
The
calculations.
information we got this morning, Mr. Raj,
That's it in your hand right
just
there.
with the jobs that
That's it.
I didn't read through.
It's the same thing we had about
That's
3 weeks
broken,
ago.
that's broken down by departments and from the top to the bottom of each department. And it shows you each position. It shows you what each position's salary was before the 4% across the board raise that we gave in May. And
I'm
then
sorry,
it
I mean the
shows you-
retention piece.
To finish explaining this, it shows you which employees would still fall below the minimum if we adopt the new pay plan, and what it would take to bring them up to the minimum in the new pay plan, and the total cost of implementation to bring those people to the minimum, and it would do $338,737. If you look through this, you can see that a little less than half of the people would receive some additional increase in their salary by bringing them up to minimum. And Mr. Raj will have to answer the question regarding retention. But typically, retention has been a problem with maintenance workers, sanitation workers, meter readers, and those kinds of positions, which were at the lowest end of the scale.
Yeah, that's what I was asking.
And they're already, if you look at the information provided, the majority of them are the lower end, the refuse collectors, our meter readers. And you'll notice that a lot of them are going up at least $3,000 minimum. It's not to say they're all going to get an increase, but a lot of them, if you look at the years of service, that first column, it's how long they've been with the city. And those positions, you'll see a lot of them are 1 year, or maybe even a 0, that just started when I had compiled this
And
information.
the greatest retention is where?
Most of our greatest retention is in the supervisory positions.
So they're not experiencing similar increases.
Mr. Silver.
First, I want to compliment you on the report. Part of this we received some time ago, but I think you were a little bit apprehensive, initially saying maybe we haven't done our homework, and I'd like my colleague to reconsider this idea, because psychologically, this would be a great lift for the employees of the city, and maybe a few dissidents. But in the broad picture, I was thinking of Danny Sullivan, who also blessed this, and he's been at this thing a long time. And I just feel that it's incumbent upon us to do what is right for the general public, the employee public of the city. And that was the reason I suggested we go to number 3 first, because I think we owe it to them, we also owe it to ourselves, and I think we really, in fact, have done due diligence.
And I think you're correct, we do owe it to the employees, we owe it to ourselves, but I would like to request, as I stated earlier from this administration, Mr. Lawson, Mr. Marshall as president of the council, or maybe a week from this day, and that way we can be provided what we just stated on the breakdown on the retention employees, the complete final analysis of this plan, to take final action on this measure a week from today, along with bringing back Mr. Foster and Ms. Seastrom.
Mr. Johnson, we also had one other additional person here to discuss the plan, Dr. Nassif, who's the chairman of the Civil Service Commission. Could he be allowed to address the council?
Yes, I didn't know he was, I wasn't aware that he was here. Thank you, Mr. Johnson.
And while Mr. Nassif is coming up, let me just mention that we did implement a 4% raise in May that everybody got. It was across the board. And that raise cost the city $744,000. It's reflected on the documents that have been presented to you. So we are addressing those people with longevity, and those people are getting increases. 4% is quite a substantial increase in pay. And of course, if you're at the top of the scale making a higher salary, your 4% is more than somebody at the bottom who only gets 4% on a small salary.
Good morning. My name is Dusty Nassif. I'm the chair of the Alexandria Civil Service Commission. I would just like to take a moment to address this because this has been a primary concern and a big effort on our part because of the problems within the city of hiring. And I'm a little bit taken back by some council's reactions because the same council said here, I can remember less than a year ago, questioning why we couldn't hire employees. And if we just refresh our memories back to the meter readers, the situation, I don't think I have to refresh that there was a significant problem with that. There was a grave problem to our citizens of Alexandria, as well as, if you remember when the auditor came, it hurt us financially. And what this pay plan does, and let me say this, the commission adopted it unanimously. In addition to that, we had the same concerns that you have of compression. In fact, before we voted on it, we had administration come and address compression and got a commitment from the administration that compression would be addressed within the first 2 years after implementation of the plan. But understand the plan's intent is to allow the city of Alexandria to be more competitive in its hiring practices. And when I hear that we can't hire meter readers and when we're questioning what's the problem with civil service, well, part of the problem is we're not competitive with this. Just to refresh memories, we adopted pay plans in the year 2000 that was not approved, the year 2003 that was not approved, and I do express some concern that the pay plan this year is not going to be approved. But understand that our hands are tied beyond that. We can't go out and recruit if we're not competitive on the recruiting end. The other point that I want to make is that, you know, without passing the pay plan, I know compression is a very important part of it, and we were concerned about that also. But without passing it, about 50% of employees with the city won't get a raise. Yes, those individuals that were not going to get a raise by not passing, they're still not going to get that raise. But the downside to that is we're still hand-tied as far as hiring employees. Where this pay plan addresses the problems I feel that are most needed is in the lower level jobs. For example, meter readers, maintenance workers, sanitation. Those are the individuals that we need to recruit to maintain city function. And the last thing that I'll say is that as a commission, again, we spent considerable time on this. And the bottom line for us was that we deferred to the experts. There are 182 positions listed in your pay plan. In no way do I claim to be an expert on any one of those positions, nor did any other commissioner. At some point, you have to defer to the experts. We hired these consultants to do this for us. They've done it. I don't know what else that we can do from our end on it.
Mr. Lawson.
Dr. Nassif, how long have you all had this final product?
We've had the final product about 3 or 4 months, I would say.
So would you consider it inappropriate for us to defer a few weeks on it to make an intelligent decision?
No, if that's what you need, absolutely take the time to do it. You know, but I can tell you this, we were under pressure to get it also. And we've been under considerable pressure, not only from the administration, from the council, because of hiring processes. So,
absolutely, and I think we need to act with a sense of urgency, and it's not going to take us 3 or 4 months.
No.
I assure you, and I appreciate what you just said. It certainly has enlightened me, because I thought you just answered the question of retention piece. And if we're addressing on the lower end, as you mentioned, with workers and the craftspeople, then we're certainly doing something, I think, in the right direction. So I'm to the point where I'm in the right church, almost the right view, and I appreciate what you did.
I'd like to just say one more thing. I want to remind you that the people that have been in their jobs and been here for quite a long time are being taken care of with across-the-board raises. And let me point out once again that they received a 4% raise in May and a 2% raise last year. So in the last year and a half, these people have received a 6% raise. Those people are being taken care of. We're trying to move up the minimum pay in certain positions so that we can hire those positions and make ourselves marketable.
And with that said, I know,
Can I say one more?
Good,
Is
so-
there any possible way that with these consultants here, that instead of worrying about lunch or just sitting, we could spend the next hour and a half thinking about this?